Hello and welcome to Property Mastermind Podcast, episode 234. Yes, you heard it right. 234. We're in sequence. And this is the beginning of 2026. So Happy New Year to you all. And we wish you a prosperous and successful property development 2026. Today we are talking from interest rates to inspiration and making money in any market, because as you know, markets change, things happen, and how can you stay ahead and still make money? Let's jump on in, episode 234. Hello and welcome to episode 234. Happy New Year, Bob.
Happy New Year,
Woo-hoo! Everybody. Yeah, it's weird though because it's still 2025 when we're recording it. But we can get excited because this is the first of 2026 in the podcast arena.
Yeah, gee, what year did we even start?
234 episodes.
More than 4 years ago. Nearly heading for 5, so yeah.
We've done a few podcasts. So often people say, I listen to your podcast. Yeah, it happens everywhere. Yeah.
It does. Yeah, well, a lot of people like it, apparently. I like it. I like doing them.
Yeah, well, that probably pays off, Bob. They've gotten easier. I think we've become a bit more experienced, and I'd love your feedback. Feel free to let us know what you think in the comments, especially on YouTube. Jump on and let us know. We'd actually appreciate that if you do that. And if you think if there's something you'd like to know, then reach out and maybe we can do a podcast on a topic that you'd actually like, as a request. Anyway, Bob, so today we're talking from interest rates to inspiration, making money in any market. And as you've, done so many developments through so many years, you've been impacted by things in the market, by things that have happened, and so have many others. And we'll try and keep it relevant with what's happening now for people in the market. But we can lean into some of your experiences and what you'd recommend. I know there'll be some absolute nuggets in this one. Hey, before we get started, we're going to give the book away to Tarvyville. Tarvy. Oh, we know each other, Tarvy. Anyway, this is in the post to you. We've met. And thank you for your email last week. Now, Bob, what's your tip for this week?
Oh, my tip for this week is, and perhaps it's showing up on the video for those that are watching a video, not just listening, is when you think you've got enough block out, face cream, whatever you call it.
You mean sunblock?
Sunblock will do. When you think you've got enough sunblock on your face, put on some more. Because I thought I had plenty on, and I went out and got myself cooked.
I know.
And I thought I was covered.
Oh my gosh, it's so ridiculous. I actually put, it says invisible zinc, but I went out because we were fishing yesterday. So I went out and I'm actually white. I think I did a story on Instagram because it did say invisible zinc. So I'm thinking you should be able to put this on and not see. But I put enough on my skin that I know I won't get burnt. And then I still wear a hat and a face mask and all of the business. And we come back and you wouldn't even think I've been outside. We come back and Bob is red. And I'm like, oh my goodness, you've got to put more sunblock on.
Yeah, I know, particularly with my skin. But there you go, there's a lesson.
Yeah. And it's only the first time we've had that conversation. All the other women listening are thinking, she said that to him before.
Yeah.
And even the clever men, yes. It is one of those conversations. Not the first time.
Not the first time I've been sunburned either.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so Bob, today we're talking about from interest rates to inspiration. So it's not just about interest rates. It's about things that do affect the property developers. So I'm not going to say the property market as such because that's open to investing and a few other things. We'll just talk about for property developers, the things that impact the market. And we've had some interest rate increases and we've had some drops. So really, it's not just about interest rates. There are other things that impact property developers, the process, or even the way they look at a feasibility or everything. So what are the biggest things that impact the property developer when it comes to like finding a site or going through? What's the biggest ones?
Yeah, well,
market-wise?
Yeah, I often say there's bottlenecks, but the thing about the property development arena or industry or whatever you want to call it is quite dynamic and it's fluid and it moves and it doesn't always stay the same, which is part of the reason it's so exciting, I guess. But things that have effect on it, interest rates will have an effect. we can cover some of these things, obviously. Interest rates. Sometimes it's just hard to find a site that stacks up. That can be an effect. You got macroeconomic things that have a bit of an effect, unemployment, public sentiment. You might think, what's that got to do with it? But that has an effect.
What do you mean by public sentiment?
Well, the confidence of people and how they view the market, the property market, or how they view the share market. And that can have an effect on the property market, because if money spills out of the share market, it usually goes to property. Availability of land, because some places are using up all their available land, so land becomes scarce. Build costs, we've seen that. So all these things have an effect. And what I always say is some effects are good and some effects are not good, but it's never a case where everything's bad or everything's good. You usually get a mixture. And when it's more good, it sort of booms, and when it's not as good, it doesn't boom. But it doesn't mean you can't make money either. So there's a number of factors that do affect it at different times.
It's interesting you brought up the macro effects, meaning those little things that impact. But what do you see as and it's really hard as I say that, because you did bring up different areas have different things impacting them. Because if we go back, 10 years, Western Australia there was a massive impact on that market, and that was an unusual thing. Was it about 10 years or longer, maybe 14?
I think it was 2014, I think
okay.
is when the Western Australian market had been booming. And at that time, when it peaked, properties were worth more in Perth than they were in Sydney. It was the most expensive city in Australia in terms of house values.
And then it just crashed, and so it was impacted by the mining, what do you call it, the mining environment, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, the thing about Western Australia is it's very heavily reliant on mining as an industry and as a big employer. And so the mining industry can ebb and wane. And say iron ore, that's a big thing in Western Australia. It's not the only thing they mine. But if the iron ore market sort of crashed, then that would have a huge effect on the Western Australian economy, mining companies, employment. All those things filter through to housing and development. So it's affected in a big way by mining. When mining's booming, Western Australia's booming.
Yeah, and so I was about to say, we were talking about the things, the small things that impact the environment, but then that also changes, Australia-wide, which state you're in, or state, and even breaking that down further. And if we look at somewhere like Brisbane at the moment, that there's the gearing up of the Olympics, and that's having an impact now. And then in Victoria, maybe there's been a little bit of negativity around politically, and then there's a little bit of uneasiness down there right now, so that might have an impact on some things. So there are so many things that do impact the market for property developers, and for any market really, but for property developers definitely. But let's just blanket view it, which isn't fair. I'm sorry, but I'm going to throw you in that box. But if you were to blanket, what are the three biggest things, or is it four or is it two, that impact a property development? When have you been most impacted, that other developers around Australia are also impacted?
Well, supply and demand is a big thing. And when you've got an oversupply, that forces prices down, sale prices down. It squeezes your profit margin. So oversupply can be a big negative.
Holy moly, oversupply. We've got a massive undersupply, don't we?
Nationally.
Yes. But pockets.
Yeah. So then the same way we can't talk about this, what you could try, the Australian property market. There's probably hundreds of markets that make up the Australian property market, and they're not all moving in the same direction at the same time. You can talk about this estate, Victorian property market, New South Wales property market, same thing. It can be booming in one area and not in another. And even within a city, you can have a type of development that's working well and a different type that isn't. And I went through that in 2014, 15, 16 in Brisbane. So it's not just the market; you can narrow it down to the product in property development.
And so, how do you stay ahead? So, you've just covered one. That was
supply and demand.
Yep, supply and demand.
Oversupply.
Yep.
let's say, is not a good thing.
Yeah.
Bill costs. Well, we saw an enormous rise in bill costs after COVID. I've seen bill costs go up, sure, but never so much in such a short amount of time. And that was a really rare thing. I mean, we may never see another COVID in our lifetime, hopefully, fingers crossed.
I don't think the world will actually let another COVID happen.
Yeah, but bill costs, some people think, bill costs just keep going up, don't come back. They can. I don't see them coming back at the moment. I don't see them coming back for any time soon. But there have been times when they have come back that I can recall. And it could be within a market or a whole city where there's an oversupply and construction slows down and not many DAs get done, not many BAs get done, builders start to look for work, tradies drop their prices. But we haven't seen that for quite a while.
And are there any other things that will impact?
Well, they're big ones. Interest rates do. Because interest rates also have a confidence effect with people. It's not just purely the mathematics of an interest rate. We saw, the year before last? When was it? I'm starting to forget my years now. Was it 2024 or 23? 24 maybe?
I think it was 24.
Where the interest rates were going up.
Yeah.
Went up every month for like a year.
Well, maybe it was 23.
And you're starting to do it.
Yeah, no.
It doesn't really matter. But they were only small interest rate increases, 25 basis points, 0.25%. But it just kept happening every month. It's like getting slapped around the head, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
You just kept slapped. You're barely over this month, slapped and you get another one. And that was a big confidence thing. So sure, the mathematical part of the interest rates going up has an effect. People having to pay more for money. But it also really dented confidence.
And unfortunately, that actually at that time, and we want to keep it relevant and talk about it now, but at that time it happened the same time as build costs went up. And that actually was a little bit tough, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was on the back end of build costs going up. So it's relevant in that it's only in the last 4 years, but we saw a rapid rise in values post-COVID. At the same time, build costs were going up, but property values were going up so much that it just absorbed the build costs. But then that peaked, but the build costs kept increasing. And so that effect kept going. And then all of a sudden, interest rates joined in.
Yeah.
And so you got increasing bill costs and interest rates going up. That was tough.
Are they the bigger ones? They're the three main ones.
They're the big ones for sure. But now you're saying keeping it relevant. Well, we've seen interest rates come back a bit. Every time that happens, confidence increases with people in the market. And bill costs, they're going up, but most big quantity surveying firms are saying they're going up, 4 to 5% in a year, which, is containable. It's probably going to be, that 4% mark for a while.
Bob, do interest rates really impact property development success?
Well, they can, but if I go back to my first ever property development, interest rates were 23%. Bank rates weren't that high, but at the time banks weren't lending and you had to go to the hard finance companies to get money. My first few projects, they're charging 23%. But guess what? My projects were profitable because I put 23% into the feasibilities and they worked, and that's all that mattered.
And that leads me to my next question. Do you plan for rising rates?
Well, if you think they're going to rise, but when you say rising rates, as a property developer, say an average project, 2 years, not too big a project, 2-year project, it has an effect for sure, but it doesn't have a big effect because you're only borrowing for a short amount of time and you're borrowing at the day that you borrow. So the day that you borrow your money, if it's X percent, it's locked in, it'll be X percent. Whether interest rates go up after that, often they're locked or they might be variable, they might rise. I'm talking about development financing. I'm not talking about retail finance on your house. Of course, they're going to go up. They keep going up. But they can be locked in a bit. And it doesn't have a big effect over that period of time. It probably affects investors more because they're borrowing for the long term, whereas property development is a short-term thing. But it does have an effect. But it also can have that effect on the market. I talked about confidence. So property developers, interest rates can affect them in two ways. One is the cost of money to do the development. But then if you're selling residential real estate it's going to be bought by owner-occupiers, many of whom have a mortgage, or investors who even more have a mortgage because it's tax deductible. But they're buying for the long term. So in a way, it can affect your sales as well, in a good way or a not so good way.
So a really interesting point there, Bob, you made up was, you didn't make it up, that you pointed out was commercial finance and interest rates going up. And you pointed out that interest rates can increase, but the important thing to remember is your loan isn't like your average house loan that's 25, 30 years. Your loan is going to be your 12, 18 months, whatever your development is. So it won't really have that big of an impact. So what is it? Let's say on a give me some numbers on that. What sort of impact will it have? Because you're always about the FISO. So Bob's rule is do the FISO properly on today's figures, not on tomorrow's figures, not on what you might get then. You do it on what happens right now. And that's always, isn't it, in feasibilities. So if there is a slight interest increase, what sort of impact would that have? Or is that why the financiers are wanting their margin of at least 15, depending on the product, or 20 or whatever they're after for their particular product that they're loaning for?
Yeah, so let's say during the course of a 2-year project, interest rates went up 8 times. That might be 2%, eight quarters, 2%. Let's say it went up. Well, it was lower at the beginning and higher at the end, so the average is in the middle. So the average is it went up 1%. It'll make a difference, but it won't make a big difference because it's only over a 2-year period. But it does make a little bit of a difference, but it's not big. And so if you're thinking that interest rates are going to go up, and they normally don't like just go up out of the blue, bang, oh, geez, no one was expecting that. They're normally
Like an uppercut.
Well, they go up for a reason, and economically you can sort of see the reasons why you might be heading that way. So you could put a little bit of a buffer in there, add an extra percent to your feasibility.
If it's looking likely.
If it's looking like it's going to go up, because that'll cope with 2% over the whole 2-year project. So that's just putting a buffer in.
I suppose when you say it like that, it's so minor. We ran our first mastery session on Saturday for the people in the mastery mentoring program. So we do a 2.5-hour intensive, and we went right back to basics to help people just take those initial steps, get started, understand it. And we talked about buyer's agents. And when you said what that cost you, because the amount of money, the percentage that it impacts the actual outcome of your development, it makes, and this is kind of where I'm relating this to that 1% interest rate. It's so minor, isn't it, when you think about it in the whole scheme of things?
Yeah, it is. And you can play with your feasibility. If you've got a feasibility calculator, you can have a look at, well, what effect would that make? If it went up 2% over a project, that's an average of 1%. You can put that into your feasibility calculator and you can quantify exactly how many dollars. So what does that do to my profit? But then is there any growth? Do you feel that there's thinking about it, do you feel there's any growth in during that project time, the time you buy it to the time you sell it, 2 years? And it doesn't necessarily go in your FISO, but you can have a look at what it is, because if you thought the market was going to go up only 1%, that's 1% of a high number. And that 1% of the sale price going up is probably equal to about 0.4% increase in build costs. So the big number can completely overpower the small number. You can have build costs going up, but if the market's solid and sale prices are going up, they don't have to go up much to wipe out that 2%, 3%, 4% in build cost increases. So it just depends. But if you had a market where sale prices are pegging back a little bit because of an oversupply and build costs are going up 4%, then that's sort of two negatives. What that will do, won't wipe you out. It'll punch a hole in your profit. So instead of making $140,000 per townhouse, you might end up making 100 or 90 or something. So it's still not bad, but you try and get it as accurate as you can. And look, interest rates do have an effect, but not as much as a lot of people might think.
And are there any metrics that matter more than interest rates?
Well, they're all into displays, we talked about increased costs in bill costs. That's a metric. Interest rates very much so, because that's the one that you hear about, isn't it?
Mm.
You know, if interest rates go up, even 0.25%, there'll be a story on the news that night of, it's
For those watching on YouTube, I've sort of massive eye roll.
Somebody's suffering,
Yeah.
But then there's other. But then when interest rates go up, it's really good for self-funded retirees. You never hear about that. People whose whole living and income is based on getting a proper interest rate return. What about them? We never hear about them. When interest rates drop, it's supposed to be good news. It's not good news for them. So it's not all, it's not always bad to have an interest rate increase. It's good for some people.
That's interesting.
If you've got money on deposit, it's good for you.
Mm.
And some people rely on that on their self-funded retirees. So, but we're talking about property development. So, other metrics. I mean, it's a balance, isn't it? Like you talk about the big costs, sale price, the biggest cost. What's that doing? That's going to affect your feasibility more than anything. Bill costs, and interest rates are a part of it. If you have a look at the dollar value of the interest you pay on a project compared to what maybe a couple of percent increase in sale prices could be over that period, it'll more than wash out all that interest rate increases.
Well, Bob, the fact that it's, the beginning of 2026, and I know you just love it when I put you on the spot like this. Yeah. What do you see happening this year in property development? What do you see? Are we looking at increases? Are we looking at build prices just staying with their usual 4% a year? What are we looking at, and how, and how, if at all, will the probably more likely federal government help us, the little developer, not the big ones, but so what do you see 2026 bringing for developers?
I never really think of the government as being too helpful.
No, I know.
My experience with them, and I've looked at even doing a couple of joint ventures years ago with both state and council, not federal. I just ignore them. They'll do what they do. But if you're talking about moving forward into 2026, interest rates are actually pretty good in terms of, they've come down a little bit. Will we see another drop? More yes than no, but if we don't, I don't care, because they're okay, they're stable. So finance, and there's so much money in the marketplace for property development. Not so much in the normal retail banking sector, for sure. There's nothing much there, but in the commercial sector, in the non-bank sector, it's just a wash with funds. And so getting finance for as long as the project stacks up, it'll get money. And so that's, I don't see getting finance is not an issue. As far as the interest rates, yes, even on commercial, they have come back a bit, but just use the interest rate in your FISO. I mean, that's all you got to do. I used 23% when I started off, and it worked because that's what I had to pay. Finance Corporation of Australia, I still remember the name of the institution. 23%, doesn't matter. Went into the FISO, works, did my project, made money.
You did a big FISO the other day on a really big project, huge. What interest rate did you put in?
Oh, that is a big project. I should be able to get commercial bank finance on that, so I put in 6%.
Whoa, there you go.
Well, we're using bank finance on another project, commercial bank, not retail. Don't waste your time going there. And it's 5.9, I think.
Really? Well, I like that. I don't know where we're sitting with that finance yet.
But that's special.
It's in line, yeah.
Banks are pretty fussy about what they finance. If we just talk about non-bank commercial.
What about our students right now? What are they putting into their FISOs right now, interest rate wise?
8.5 probably on average for non-bank commercial finance.
This is December 2025, those listening.
Yep.
Just in case you listen to this in a year's time and put that number in and it's completely out, and then you go, listen to that podcast. Yeah. Okay. So
there's a number landing around the 9% mark.
Okay.
Remember, capitalised interest, no serviceability required, and lending pretty good LVRs. Up around 70% of your GRV, your gross realisation value.
I heard you say the other day that they're really softening on that. It used to be a lot tighter, and it's a lot. They are lifting the GRVs.
Yeah, they are. Some of the financiers, this is for like small projects. When I say small, I mean up to maybe 4, 5, 6 townhouses. So
From
anything less than
duplexes to that, yeah.
Yeah, duplexes, small townhouse projects, that sort of thing. There have been lenders lending 70% of GRV, gross realisation value, not including GST. So that's your sale price of your project. A couple of them have gone up to 75% now. But as an offset against that, they'll lend up to 80% of your total development costs. So it might be that's the one that makes the inhibitor. So it might be that you can't get the full 75 because you've hit 80% on your total development cost before you get up to the 75% of GRV. But if it's a profitable project, you'll get there, 75%. So what I mean is they're lending high. There's plenty of money out there in that sector, in the commercial non-bank sector. So I don't see finance. We're talking about how do I see the new year coming up.
Yep.
I see plenty of money there. Any deal that stacks up will get money. Interest rates, I don't care if they don't come down, but they're more likely to come down a little bit at some point than not. Sale prices, well, build costs. Let's go to build costs. I think we have to factor in probably 4% per annum growth. But if we're doing our feasibility, we do it on today's price. So we don't really escalate the build price over the next 2 years because we're not escalating the sales price. So that's why we just don't escalate. And that's what a valuer does. They work on today's values. That's why we do it, because that's what the valuer does on behalf of the bank. So, build costs I think are going to go up a bit, but I also see mostly sale prices are pretty steady. Depends where you are. Southeast Queensland, yeah, it's going really well. The 2032 Olympics have given it a big boost. There's a lot of interstate migration, even if the Olympics weren't on. Victoria's been a bit of I wouldn't call it a basket case, but they've been at the disadvantage for a few years. But I know some pretty solid developers down in Victoria really saying it's starting to lift. And so I see a few good years ahead for Victoria.
I feel like that too, just from the people I've spoken to.
Yeah. So, you can go around the country, but generally good. The economy's still pretty solid, nationally, federally. I see it as pretty good.
Pretty positive for 2026.
Yeah.
You've had more positive than you have seen going into another year, or pretty standard, I suppose. Do you always go into every year feeling like this, or is this above average?
It's at least average, probably a little bit more.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, a little bit more than average. I've seen some tough years, back in the days of Paul Keating when, what we have? Unemployment, 9.5%. Inflation, probably 10 or 11%. They were tough times. Nothing like that. No, having lived and survived through those, I'm pretty happy with the way things are.
So, advice for anyone thinking about property development in 2026?
Great, get into it. Yeah, for sure. It's there's a lot of good markers, and nationally we're still undersupplied for dwellings. But if you narrow it down to a suburban level. But the funny thing about even oversupply is it can disappear. Let's say you're looking at a suburb at the moment that you think is good, and you think, oh, geez, it's a bit oversupplied. There's a lot of duplexes on the market at the moment, and that might be the case. And maybe because there's so many on the market, the prices might have come back a little bit. So there might be, I don't know, just guessing. Say there was a 5% drop in. So there was a 5% drop in values because of a bit of an oversupply. Well, the thing is this, when that oversupply comes in and starts to exist, what happens? Well, people stop buying sites to develop because they look at the market as it is. They're not sort of looking forward 2 years. And they think, oh, no, it's fine, I'm not buying in there. People that might have a site think, oh, a bit of an oversupply. They don't go ahead getting a development permit, which means they don't move on to a building permit and move on to construction. So what happens? You end up with
a downturn,
an undersupply. So, but if you're buying a site in that suburb at the moment, you're not going to be selling it for 2 years. Let's say it's a decent duplex. Okay, you buy the site today, you won't be selling it for 2 years. It'll take you that long to get all your approvals, your finance, your settlement, your permits, build it, get it on the market. So in a way, what really matters is what's it going to be like in 2 years. And quite often when you've got an oversupply, it swings back the other way because people back off it. And then those that you're not really buying counter-cyclical, but you're buying knowing it's not going to be like that in 2 years' time. And we've done that when we've bought. So, yeah, you got to think not like it is now.
And I think I'm hearing you say there's been many volatile times before, and there's nothing volatile at the minute. I suppose one last question before we wind this one up, Bob. It would be, what would be your advice? Well, you just said, it's a great time to get into property development. What's your advice on making money for 2026?
Other than property development?
Yeah.
Well, that's the only thing I know. That's what we do. We make our money out of property development. So nothing's changed there. We can continue to do that. And it's back to basics. Choose good areas in the upper half of the market rather than the bottom half of the market. That's where you're likely to make your profits. And become like we say, educate yourself. Choose an area that sort of fits those parameters, and get out there and basically do it. I mean, there's a few steps to doing it, as we know. That's why we teach people how to do it. But get into it. Thrive on it, absorb it, love it.
Take
like
action.
We do.
Go do it. Yeah, yesterday when we were out fishing, we were talking about, we've got some deals coming to an end and what that means for us and what the next steps are, and and what we plan moving forward, which is really exciting stuff. And if I look back 10 years ago, did I ever think I'd be having these types of conversations? It is a game changer. It's a life changer. And if you are thinking about it, I agree. Get into it. Go do it.
Yeah, I've never found anything better.
Me either, really.
That's why I'm still doing it.
It's pretty exciting. It is. It's very exciting. Well, Bob, thanks very much. Happy New Year to everybody listening. Yeah. As we're sitting here, I was considering, do we do some form of goal setting or maybe pre-planning podcast? But then everyone does those, and I'm thinking maybe we don't, maybe we do. I'm not sure. I'll either do that next week or we won't. I'm unsure. But anyway, welcome to 2026. If you're thinking about property development and you'd like to have a chat with our team, just check below. There'll be a link. You can always book into the diary and have a chat with somebody. But why not you? And if not you, then who? So you might as well get into it if you've been thinking about it. All right, we'll catch you next week. Bye.
Bye.